Welcome to today's Explainer. If there's one topic that always seems to find its way into lunchroom chatter or weekend catch-ups here in Oz, it's superannuation. We all know it's important for our future, but lately, there's this specific acronym getting thrown around a lot: SMSF, or Self-Managed Superannuation Fund. You've probably heard people talking about how it's the ultimate way to take charge of your financial future, but is that the whole story? Well, let's dive right in and look at the expectations versus the reality of SMSFs and separate the everyday chatter from the actual rules and responsibilities. To really understand how this conversation usually starts out, let me tell you a quick story about an everyday Australian named Emily. So Emily was having lunch at work with some colleagues when the topic of retirement savings inevitably came up. Someone at the table leaned in and confidently dropped this line: "If you want more control over your super, you should look into an SMSF. A lot of people seem to be doing it." Sounds pretty great, right? I mean, the word control is incredibly appealing. It almost makes it sound like a no-brainer. Well, that idea kind of stuck with Emily for the rest of the afternoon. Later that day, on the drive home, she was chatting with her partner Daniel and said, "Something at work got me thinking today. People were talking about SMSFs like it's something everyone should be doing." And honestly, that perfectly captures that exact moment of curiosity we all have when a financial trend starts making the rounds at work or on our social feeds. It sounds so popular, you really start to wonder if you're missing out on something big. Now, Daniel is a bit more grounded. He's got that natural, sensible skepticism when it comes to one-size-fits-all financial trends. His response cuts straight to the chase. But is it really for everyone? Because honestly, I reckon everything comes with conditions. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole core of our explainer today. Daniel hit the nail right on the head. In the world of superannuation, there is no magic wand, and greater control always comes paired with certain conditions and legal obligations. Emily immediately agreed with him, replying, "That's exactly what I thought. Sometimes you hear about something and it sounds like everyone's doing it, but I'm not sure people always understand what's actually involved. It's so easy to get caught up in the hype when you only hear the highlight reel, isn't it? The reality is, what happens behind the scenes of that so-called control is rarely discussed casually over a sandwich with your colleagues." And that brings us to Daniel's realization, which honestly serves as the perfect launching pad for the rest of our explainer. He says, maybe before assuming something's right for you, it's worth understanding the responsibilities, the rules, and how it actually works. So the absolutely crucial point here is, before anyone jumps on the SMSF bandwagon based on a quick chat at work, we really need to lift the lid and look at what the regulatory framework actually requires. Let's step away from the lunchroom for a minute and look at the facts. Let's start with a simple, jargon-free definition. An SMSF, or Self-Managed Superannuation Fund, is a type of regulated super fund that can have a maximum of 6 members. The defining feature here is that the members of the fund are also the ones who have greater involvement in how the fund is actually managed. So you aren't just handing your money over to a large institution to manage on your behalf, you're stepping into a role where you are directly involved in the decision-making process. Let's do a quick comparison to see how this builds our understanding. On one side, we have your standard super fund. With this option, you generally have less direct control over the day-to-day specific investments. But in exchange, you have much lower administrative responsibilities. The fund's managers handle the compliance, the audits, the whole shebang. On the flip side, an SMSF offers greater participation and control over certain decisions. You can choose specific assets to hold, for example. But that control brings with it significantly higher administrative and compliance obligations. It is a direct trade-off. Because an SMSF requires its members to be heavily involved, the law states that all members must generally be trustees of the fund, which naturally leads an everyday Australian to ask, what does being a trustee actually mean? It's a formal-sounding word, I know, but understanding it is absolutely key to figuring out whether an SMSF is the right fit. Basically, a trustee is the person who assumes the legal responsibilities, makes the administrative decisions, and fulfills the obligations for how the fund operates. Think of it like this. Being in a standard super fund is kind of like being a passenger on a big cruise ship. You pick your destination, sit back, relax, and the captain and crew take care of the navigation, the engine room, and the safety protocols. Being a trustee of an SMSF is more like being the captain of your own private boat. Yes, you get to steer exactly where you want to go, but you are also personally responsible for checking the engine, logging your journey, and making sure you comply with all the maritime laws. Let's break down exactly what that captain's log looks like in the real world. The superannuation framework outlines several strict trustee responsibilities. As a trustee, you are responsible for preparing, implementing, and regularly reviewing the fund's investment strategy. You've got to arrange for the SMSF's financial statements to be prepared and ensure an approved independent annual audit takes place. You're operating the fund's bank account, which means making absolutely sure contributions are accepted correctly and expenses are paid properly. You also have to retain various fund records, minutes of meetings, and trustee declarations for anywhere from 5 to 10 years. Just imagine the sheer volume of paperwork to organize. It's not just a casual weekend hobby. It's a proper responsibility that requires real, consistent organization. Now, overseeing all of these administrative tasks is one massive overarching rule in the superannuation regulatory framework. It's called the sole purpose test. This brilliantly illustrates the core philosophy of Australian superannuation. The sole purpose test legally mandates that your SMSF must be established and maintained for the sole purpose of providing retirement benefits to its members, or to their dependents if a member passes away before retirement. Every single thing you do as a trustee must pass this test. And that brings us to a golden rule that literally cannot be overstated. It is not personal money. While you absolutely have control over the investment decisions of the fund, the money inside an SMSF cannot be treated as a personal piggy bank. It is strictly locked away for retirement. Any action by a trustee that has a purpose other than a retirement purpose is viewed incredibly unfavorably by the regulator. You absolutely cannot use SMSF funds for a current-day financial boost or personal assistance. To enforce this, the law requires very strict separations. There can be no ancillary or side benefits provided to the trustees personally arising from the fund's investment decisions. Furthermore, fund assets must be kept completely separate from your personal assets. So if you buy a property or shares through the SMSF, it must be crystal clear that the SMSF owns them, not you personally. Finally, all transactions must be conducted on strict commercial arm's-length terms. Blurring the lines between your personal life and your SMSF is a serious breach of compliance rules that can have some pretty severe penalties. Finding the right fit. So, stepping back and bringing it all together, we've seen the appeal of control, and we've walked through the reality of the responsibilities, from audits and record-keeping to the strict boundaries of the sole purpose test. We check back in with Emily and Daniel's conversation and realize that having control isn't just a privilege, it's a legal duty. And that leads us to this incredibly important takeaway. An SMSF is not necessarily suitable for everyone. The objective here isn't to say that SMSFs are good or bad. For some people, those who have the time, the financial knowledge, and a genuine desire to manage their own compliance and investment strategies, an SMSF might be entirely appropriate. But for others, who perhaps prefer a hands-off approach or just don't want the burden of acting as a trustee and managing strict regulatory compliance, a standard super fund makes much more sense. So the next time you hear people talking about superannuation around the water cooler, or you hear someone casually mention that everyone should have an SMSF to get more control, remember Emily and Daniel. Ask yourself, before assuming it's right for you, are you genuinely ready for the responsibility? It's all about looking past the hype, understanding your own circumstances, and making an educated decision about how you want to manage your retirement journey. This content is general and educational. It is not financial advice. If you already have an SMSF or want to better understand your compliance responsibilities, speak with the team at Wendy Super Accounting.